Freddie Mercury spent his life giving the world unforgettable performances. But in his final years, he gave one fan something far more precious. A secret message spoken in the silence of a rainy night in London. A message so personal, so vulnerable, that she kept it hidden from the world for decades. Who was this mysterious young woman? Why did Freddie choose to confide in her, a stranger? And what did he say that could change how the world remembers him? Tonight, you'll finally discover the truth Freddie never intended the cameras to see. Before we begin, make sure to subscribe, like this video, and turn on notifications so you never miss our emotional stories about Freddie Mercury. London, November 1990. The city lights shimmered like diamonds blurred by rain. A cold wind swept through Kensington, nudging fallen leaves across the quiet neighborhood. Behind the tall walls of Garden Lodge, Freddie Mercury watched the storm from his living room window. Once, rain had meant excitement. A crowd waiting outside the venue, screaming his name, begging for a glimpse of the legend. Now, the outside world felt like a reminder of everything he was losing. His body weakened more each day. His voice, the voice that once conquered Wembley, now fought against silence. Fame still surrounded him, yet loneliness had become his most loyal companion. He turned away from the window to sit down, but something made him pause. Across the street, barely illuminated by a street lamp, stood a young woman, soaked to the bone, still, quiet, hugging something close to her chest. A vinyl record. Freddie narrowed his eyes. She wasn't shouting. She wasn't taking pictures. She wasn't like the fans who tried to invade the sanctuary. She just waited. Minutes passed. She didn't move. Jim Hutton entered the room with a cup of tea, noticing Freddie staring. Another one camping outside? Jim muttered. No, Freddie whispered. She's different. A soft knock at the gate echoed through the yard. Security went to respond. Freddie listened, the storm, the wind, and then her voice. I don't want attention, she said gently. I just want to give this to him. Security prepared to turn her away, but Freddie stepped outside. Rain splashed against his slippers. His robe clung to his fragile frame. He shouldn't be out there. Cold could be dangerous. Yet he walked toward her anyway. The woman's eyes widened, not with shock of meeting a rock legend, but with the weight of emotion she'd been holding inside for too long. I'm sorry, she stammered. I know you don't do this anymore, but I had to come. Freddie studied her trembling hands. You're soaked, darling. Come inside before we both freeze to death. They sat under the terrace awning, raindrops drumming the ground around them. The scent of wet earth lingered in the night. She placed the vinyl on the table, A Night at the Opera, carefully wrapped in a plastic sleeve. But inside, Freddie noticed a folded letter. He hesitated before pulling it out. A photograph slipped free and fell into his lap. A young girl in a hospital bed, smiling weakly while holding a picture queen. That's my sister, the woman explained, voice cracking. She listened to you every day right until the end. Freddie's breath caught. His eyes softened with pain. Did she recover? He asked, though the answer already sat heavy in his chest. The woman shook her head, tears threatening to fall. She was only 9, she whispered. Cancer. Freddie closed his eyes. He had no defense against this kind of tragedy. He had already become painfully familiar with the cruel timeline of illness. I wish I could have met her, he said quietly. You did, the woman replied, surprising him. Every time your music reached her headphones, she said it felt like you were speaking directly to her. Freddie stared at the photo again, the little girl's smile full of hope he no longer believed existed. When she realized you wouldn't make it, the woman continued, voice trembling. She made me promise something. Freddie lifted his eyes slowly. What promise? The woman took a breath she could barely hold. She told me, make sure Freddie knows he saved my life, even if it didn't last. Lightning rolled across the sky, but Freddie felt the storm happening inside him. His throat tightened. His chest ached, not from illness, but from the unbearable grace of being loved so deeply by someone he would never meet. He held the photo gently, as if it were the most fragile truth he had ever touched. Your sister, She must have been extraordinary, he whispered. She was, the woman replied, and she adored you. Freddie looked up, eyes glassy, soul wide open. What's your name, darling? Eliza. He nodded slowly, memorizing it. Then, in a voice barely louder than the rain, Freddie asked, Eliza, why do I feel like you're still not telling me everything? Her lips parted, but she said nothing. Not yet. Freddie sat quietly beneath the terrace canopy, Eliza's presence filling the cold night with strange and aching warmth. Raindrops continued to fall in steady strings against the stone patio, the storm refusing to give the city a moment of peace. In the distance, thunder rumbled, almost as if London itself were reacting to their conversation. Eliza stared down at her hands, nervously twisting her fingers together. Freddie watched her carefully, trying to understand what brought her here beyond the heartbreaking story of a little girl who idolized him. He sensed there was more, something heavier she carried, something she feared to release. You can speak freely, Freddie murmured. His voice, though weakened, still carried undeniable command. You didn't come through that storm for nothing. Eliza inhaled slowly. I was terrified to come at all. Freddie raised a brow. Darling, it's only me. I promise I don't bite anymore. The attempt at humor softened her tension, if only for a moment. She looked up, and Freddie could finally see the grief buried deep inside her eyes. It wasn't sadness she carried. It was guilt. My sister, she didn't just listen to your music, Eliza said. She lived for it. She believed you were fighting the same fight she was. Freddie blinked, startled by the accuracy of that unspoken truth. And she was right, he whispered, almost too quietly to hear. Eliza's lips parted in surprise. So it's true then. You're sick. A silence, so sharp it cut through the night. Freddie's jaw tightened. His eyes flicked away, not ashamed, but exhausted from enduring the world's gaze. Fame demanded masks, and it had begun to suffocate him. I'm tired, he said simply. That's all. But they both knew it wasn't only that. It's not fair. Eliza choked out before she could restrain herself. The world still needs you. My sister needed you. And now you're... She stopped, biting her lip hard. Fading. Freddie's breath caught. For a second, anxiety clamped his chest like a fist. Fading. The one thing he'd spent his life rebelling against. That's the trouble with being loved, he sighed. People expect you to be unstoppable. He leaned back, staring into rain as if searching for the echoes of Wembley cheers buried somewhere within it. For years they demanded everything I had, my voice, my time, my soul, he said quietly. Now that I have so little left, they just want more. Eliza listened intently, her heart tightening with every word. What do you want? She asked. Freddie hesitated. It was a question he hadn't allowed himself to answer in a long time. He looked at her directly, honestly. To be Freddie, he said, not the god they invented. The wind howled as if applauding his confession. Eliza leaned forward, voice trembling. My sister always said your bravery wasn't on stage. It was when the world wasn't watching. Freddie gave a slow, wistful smile. Clever girl. The rain softened into a steady drizzle, and for a moment, it seemed like peace might finally settle over Garden Lodge. But the moment fractured when Eliza swallowed hard and said, There's something else I need to tell you. Freddie's attention sharpened instantly. He could sense the shift in her tone, the tension tightening like a wire. What is it? He asked. Eliza's fingers brushed the vinyl sleeve, gripping it as though it were an anchor. My sister wrote something for you, she explained. Not just a message I told you. It was something she made me promise never to reveal unless... She stopped again, her throat locked. Freddie leaned closer. Unless what? Unless your life was in danger. Freddie froze. The storm seemed to pause with him. Eliza, he whispered, my life has been in danger for quite some time. She nodded, tears forming again. I know, and that's why I'm here. She reached into her pocket and pulled out a small square of folded paper, aged, creased from years of being held, protected, feared. She placed it gently into Freddie's trembling hands. He hesitated before unfolding it. Inside was a short handwritten note. When the world tries to silence you, remember the ones who heard you first. Freddie stared at the sentence and felt his heart crack all over again. His silence stretched long enough to become an answer of its own. She wanted you to know that, Eliza whispered, because she believed there would come a moment when you forget why you ever sang in the first place. Freddie placed a hand over his mouth, emotions trembling beneath every breath. Jim, watching from a distance, stepped outside slowly. Concern etched his features. "Afraid should we take this inside?" he asked gently. "You're cold." But Freddie didn't move. His entire world was that tiny piece of paper and the girl sitting across from him. "Eliza," he asked softly, "why did she think I'd forget?" Eliza blinked tears from her lashes. "Because she thought you'd lose hope." Freddie laughed once, but it wasn't amusement. It was disbelief, fear, recognition. "She was right," he whispered. "Some days I feel like I already have." Jim knelt beside him protectively, placing a comforting hand on his shoulder. Freddie didn't push him away. For the first time all night, he let someone support the weight he'd been carrying. Eliza stood slowly. "I came to give you back that hope," she said. "The hope you gave her." Freddie's eyes found hers again, filled with raw gratitude. Then she delivered the final blow. "And there's one more thing you need to know." A chill washed over Freddie, not from the cold, but from the truth she was about to release. "What is it?" he asked, voice barely audible. Eliza took a deep breath. "My sister didn't just admire you," she whispered. "She believed she was connected to you in a way no one else was." Freddie's pulse quickened. "Connected? How?" Eliza stepped closer. "Because she believed you were the reason she existed." Freddie's breath hitched. Jim stared wide-eyed. Eliza braced herself. "For years, my sister believed you were her father." Lightning struck, illuminating the garden in a blinding white flash. Freddie's world collapsed into silence. Freddie stared at Eliza, his breath held captive somewhere between disbelief and fear. The storm no longer mattered. The cold no longer mattered. Every ounce of pain in his body went silent. Her words echoed through his skull like a song he didn't want to hear. "For years, my sister believed you were her father." Jim's hand remained steady on Freddie's shoulder, but even he froze at the revelation. Freddie forced a shallow laugh, though it lacked any real humor. "Darling, that's not a small thing to claim." Eliza exhaled shakily. "I know, and I'm not asking you to accept it. I'm only telling you what she believed, what she was told." Freddie squinted through the drizzle collecting in his lashes. "Told? By whom?" Eliza hesitated, as though stepping onto thin ice. "By our mother." Freddie's jaw clenched. "Your mother? Did I know her?" The answer arrived not with words, but with a photograph Eliza pulled from her coat pocket. She handed it to Freddie. He stared. A young woman, smiling backstage during a Queen tour in 1981. Freddie's arm wrapped around her shoulders. He recognized his own eyeliner, the stage sweat still glistening on his skin and that intoxicating, adrenaline-fueled grin he wore after every show. Jim leaned closer. "Freddie, is that—" "Yes." Freddie cut in softly. "It's Chicago, the hot space tour." His voice shook. He remembered the city, the energy, the wild nights. But this woman in the picture, what was her name? Freddie asked. "Eleanor," Eliza answered. "Eleanor Ward." Freddie repeated the name, as if testing it against memory. Something rang familiar. A flash, a drink shared backstage, laughter, playful flirting. But then it vanished into a blur of countless encounters over decades of touring. "Eleanor told my sister she met you, and that from that night, everything changed," Eliza continued. "She believed she carried a piece of you when she left." Freddie pressed his fingers to his temple, eyes burning with confusion and guilt. In the peak of his fame, the nights had been loud, alcohol, desire, adrenaline, and he lived like tomorrow didn't exist. Now tomorrow was all he thought about, because it might not come. "Why would your mother wait so long to tell her?" he asked, voice trembling. "She didn't," Eliza said. "She told her when she was still very young, but she waited too long to tell you." The truth weighed on Freddie's chest like a stone. His illness had already stripped him of the future, and now it threatened to steal his past, rewriting everything he believed about his own legacy. What happened to her? Freddie whispered, "Your mother." Eliza swallowed hard. She left, ran away from the grief. Couldn't handle losing her daughter. A tear slipped down her cheek. She hasn't been the same since. And she never found the courage to face you. Freddie stared at the photo of Eleanor again. The smile, the youth, the possibility. He held it with trembling fingers, as though afraid it might turn to dust. Jim finally spoke up, his voice filled with concern. "Freddie, we should take you inside. This is too much for you right now." "No," Freddie said firmly, surprising both of them. "Not yet." He looked at Eliza, his eyes raw with vulnerability. "Darling, do you believe it?" he asked. "Do you believe your sister was mine?" Eliza wiped her tears, choosing her next words carefully. "I believe my sister needed to believe it," she said. She needed to feel connected to someone who made her feel strong, even when her body wasn't. Freddie stared at the ground, heart aching under the weight of everything he had been, and everything he might have been. "And what about you?" he asked quietly. Eliza hesitated for a long moment. "I didn't want to believe it," she admitted, "because if it were true, then losing her would feel like losing the last piece of you too." Freddie's breath trembled, his eyes falling shut. For the first time since he discovered his illness, he felt a new kind of fear, the fear that love, even love born in imagination, might have belonged to him, and he wasn't there to receive it. A gust of cold wind made him shiver violently. Jim reacted instantly. "That's enough," he insisted gently. "We need to get you warm." Freddie reluctantly allowed Jim to help him to his feet. His legs wobbled, but Eliza stepped in, supporting his other side. Their combined efforts were enough to guide him back into the warmth of Garden Lodge. The heat hit Freddie's skin like a shock. The chandelier lights blurred in his vision. His body reminded him brutally of its limits. They settled him on the sofa. Jim wrapped a blanket around him while Eliza stood nearby, hands clasped nervously. Freddie took a moment to steady his breathing before speaking again. "Eliza, if what your mother believed is true, then I failed a child who needed me." Eliza stepped forward, her voice steadying. "No, you gave her hope when nothing else did. You gave her a reason to smile, even on the day she said goodbye." Freddie's lower lip quivered, his heart breaking deeper than any stage spotlight had ever shown. Jim knelt beside him. "Freddie, you don't have to carry this alone." But Freddie shook his head. "Jim, if part of me existed in that little girl, then part of me died with her, and I didn't even know." Eliza's eyes filled again, but she refused to look away. "She didn't want you to feel guilt," Eliza said. "She wanted you to feel alive." Freddie swallowed, his throat dry. "I don't know if I remember how." Eliza knelt before him, placing the photograph gently in his hands. "She remembered for you." The room went silent. Then a sudden ringing shattered the moment. Jim looked toward the hallway. The phone. At this hour, only one kind of call could be coming. Medical. Emergency. Bad news. Freddie's eyes widened, chest tightening. "Jim," he whispered. Jim rushed to the phone. Freddie and Eliza stared at each other in frozen suspense. Jim answered. Yes, this is Garden Lodge." "What?" His face drained of color. His grip tightened on the receiver. Freddie sensed a storm rising again, now inside these walls. Jim turned slowly. "Freddie, it's the doctor." Freddie's heart stopped, and so did Eliza's breath. Jim's voice quivered as he held the phone to his ear, listening to Dr. Gordon's urgent tone. Freddie remained frozen on the sofa, Eliza gripping her hands together, so tightly her knuckles turned white. The fireplace crackled nearby, but not even its warmth could soften the chill spreading through the room. Jim finally hung up. The silence stretched unbearable. "What is it?" Freddie asked, trying to sound calm, but the tremble in his voice betrayed him. Jim swallowed hard. "Your latest results came back early." Freddie's heart pulsed painfully against his ribs. "And," he whispered. Jim sat beside him, choosing his words carefully, as if the truth might shatter Freddie if spoken too harshly. "The infection is spreading faster than they expected," he said. "Your immune system, it's losing the fight." Freddie's eyes slowly drifted to the floor. He'd prepared himself for the worst, or at least he thought he had. But hearing the words spoken aloud made the reality feel heavier, more final. "How long?" Freddie asked. Jim's lips parted, but the answer wouldn't come. Eliza watched, her heart collapsing in sympathy. She wished she could disappear, that she wasn't present during such a devastating moment. But Freddie wasn't pushing her away. Something about her presence felt strangely grounding. Jim finally spoke. "They don't know for sure, but..." His voice cracked. "They want to intensify treatment. Immediately." Freddie closed his eyes. A weary sigh slipped from him, carrying decades of strength and sorrow. "I've spent my life defying expectations," he murmured. "But now, even I can't defy nature." Jim reached for his hand. "Freddie..." "No." Freddie shook his head. "I don't want pity. Not from anyone. Especially not tonight." Eliza stepped forward, voice trembling yet firm. "Then don't think of it as the end. Think of it as your chance to have a say in how your story ends." Freddie looked up at her, searching her expression. "So that's why you came," he said. "To remind me that somewhere out there a little girl believed I was worth fighting for." Eliza's eyes shimmered with silent confirmation. Freddie drew a long, shaky breath. "Jim, tell the doctor I'll start whatever treatment they want." Jim's face eased in relief. That was a Freddie he knew. Fierce, stubborn, relentless. But then Freddie whispered, "Not tonight." Jim blinked. "Freddie, I've given decades to the world. Tonight belonged to me." He looked at Eliza gently. "And to her..." The firelight threw soft shadows across Freddie's face, a face once larger than life, now painfully human. Jim nodded slowly. "Then I'll call them in the morning." He slipped out of the room, leaving Freddie and Eliza alone once more. The tension shifted, no longer panic-driven, but emotional, intimate. Freddie ran a thumb across the edge of the hospital photo. "I used to think the most terrifying thing was losing my voice," he confessed. "Now I realize it's being forgotten." Eliza knelt beside him again. "You could never be forgotten." Freddie smiled sadly. "History remembers a performer, but who will remember the man?" "You'd be surprised," Eliza whispered. Freddie leaned back, looking at her with a mixture of curiosity and vulnerability. "Tell me about your sister." "Everything." "What was her name?" "Amelia," Eliza replied, the name soft as a broken melody. "She loved drawing horses and singing out of tune, especially the love of my life. She always said that song was made for more than the stage. It made her feel seen." Freddie chuckled, a tiny bit of brightness in the gloom. "Even I never knew what that song would become." Eliza smiled through tears. "She told me once that if she ever met you, she'd thank you for showing her what courage looked like." Freddie's voice broke. "If I'm courageous, darling, then she was a warrior." The room fell quiet again, but this time it wasn't fear. It was connection, pure and human. Then Freddie's breath caught, another wave of pain. He pressed a hand to his chest. Eliza jumped up. "Jim!" she called out, panic rising. But Freddie squeezed her wrist lightly. "No, don't worry. Just a reminder that time is selfish." He forced himself upright, refusing to collapse again. "Eliza," he said carefully, "you came all this way in the rain at night. There must be one more reason you're here." Eliza stiffened. Her secret hovered in the air, heavy and dangerous. Freddie waited quietly. She finally met his gaze. "My sister wrote one last thing," she whispered. "Something she wanted only you to hear from my own lips." Freddie's heartbeat faltered, not from illness, but anticipation. "What did she say?" he asked. Eliza stepped closer, close enough that their shadows merged in the flicker of the firelight. "She told me to tell you." She breathed in deeply. "That you deserve to be loved until the very last moment. And she said if the world ever stopped loving you," her voice cracked, "she would keep going just for you." Freddie's expression folded. Tears brimmed, but he blinked them away. Eliza continued, forcing the words out like confession. "And she told me that when she died, if you still needed someone, I should come find you. Freddie's eyes widened. And now you're here, he murmured. Yes, Eliza whispered, because I saw you fading, just like she feared. And I couldn't let you become alone in a world you gave so much light to. Their eyes locked, an unspoken bond forming like a bridge across time, grief, and hope. Suddenly, a violent flash exploded against the windows, followed by something much louder. Shouting, dozens of voices, cameras clicking. Jim ran back into the room. They're outside, he warned. The press, they must have found out. They know you're slipping. Freddie's heart dropped. The world that adored him had come to devour what little he had left. The once quiet street outside Garden Lodge had transformed into a battlefield of flashes and shouts. Reporters, photographers, and camera crews pressed against the gates, umbrellas colliding as they jockeyed for the best angle. The iron bars shuddered under the weight of ambition. Freddie Mercury, is it true you're gravely ill? Who is the girl with you? Freddie looked this way. Just one photo. Their hunger wasn't for him, but for a story of decay, for proof that even gods crumble. Jim rushed to lock the doors and draw the curtains. His face was boiling with anger. They must have followed the doctor, he growled. Or someone at the hospital leaked it. Freddie stood in the middle of the living room, a silhouette carved out of vulnerability. Though pale and trembling, he remained composed on the surface. He had spent a lifetime facing crowds. But this crowd wasn't cheering his name. They were demanding his downfall. Eliza stepped closer to him. Freddie, we can go somewhere else. We can escape this. He shook his head slowly. The world gave me everything I ever dreamed of, he said. I won't run from it now. Jim exhaled in disbelief. But they're tearing at your privacy, your dignity. Freddie looked toward the closed curtains, imagining the chaos beyond them. I built my life on stage, he said. And now the world is trying to make my illness the encore. He lowered himself onto the couch, catching his breath. Eliza knelt beside him. His skin felt cold despite the firelight. Freddie, she said carefully, you don't need to perform anymore. He met her gaze, and in his eyes she saw the conflict of a man who had lived his life in spotlights and now feared disappearing into darkness without one. My darling, he whispered, if I stop performing, the silence will be deafening. Eliza took his hand gently, grounding him. You don't owe them anything. Freddie's breathing hitched. His ribs ached from every word, but he held her stare. You said your sister believed I was the reason she existed, he said, and that she wanted you to come to me. Why? Eliza hesitated. The secret she carried heavier than ever. She believed you would need someone to remind you of who you are when the world tried to rewrite your ending. Freddie blinked slowly. The truth of that pierced deeper than any headline ever could. Jim returned with warm tea for Freddie, but Freddie pushed it aside. His chest tightened again, harder, sharper than before. Eliza's worry sharpened. We should call the doctor back. No, Freddie insisted. I'm still here, and I still have questions. He turned slightly toward her, eyes pleading for truth. Eliza, you must tell me. Did your mother truly believe your sister was mine? Eliza pressed her lips together, fighting tears. She did, she admitted, but she also feared what that meant. For you, for us, for the world. She didn't want to be seen as someone trying to take from you. Freddie nodded slowly. So much of his life had been shaped by accusations and assumptions. This felt different. Honest. Painfully honest. And you, he asked again. What do you believe now? Eliza inhaled shakily. I believe that whether or not you were her biological father, you were the father she chose, the one she loved without ever needing proof. Freddie's voice cracked. But I cannot love her back now. I cannot give her anything in return. You already did, Eliza said softly. You gave her joy. You gave her bravery. You gave her something to hold on to. Freddie placed a hand against his heart, where Amelia once believed a piece of her belonged. Voices outside grew louder. Pusher! Cruel! Freddie, look at us. How long do you have left? Give us a statement. Freddie flinched. Jim shut the study doors tighter, blocking the noise. Freddie's breathing grew faster, anxiety rising like a wave. Eliza touched his arm. "Freddie, listen to me." Slowly, painfully, he focused on her. "You are not dying tonight," she whispered. "And you are not facing this alone." Freddie swallowed. "Then why do I feel like the world wants me to vanish?" "Because they're afraid of what happens when legends become human," she answered. Freddie's eyes shimmered, fragile and brave all at once. He leaned forward as though revealing a secret. "I'm afraid, too." Eliza squeezed his hand. "That's what makes you real." Suddenly, a loud crash. One of the outer windows cracked from the pressure of the crowd. Jim's voice thundered, "Back away from this house, or I'm calling the police." Panic surged through Freddie's veins. The world outside wanted answers, but Freddie wasn't sure he had any left to give. He clutched his chest, pain stabbing like a knife. Eliza gasped. "Freddie?" He tried to speak, but only a strangled breath escaped. Jim rushed to him, panic breaking through his composure. "Eliza, call an ambulance. Now!" Freddie's eyes widened, fear exploding behind them, because for the first time, he wasn't sure he would survive the next few minutes. Blue and red lights flashed through the rain as paramedics rushed through the gate. Police pushed back the swarming press, shouting for space, for order, for humanity. Eliza held Freddie's hand tightly as they lifted him onto a stretcher. Jim hovered at his other side, terrified but holding it together for Freddie's sake. Freddie's vision blurred as oxygen was placed against his mouth. The paramedic leaned close. "Stay with us. Freddie, you're going to be okay." But Freddie could see the truth flickering through their eyes, uncertainty. Each step the stretcher moved, Freddie felt himself drifting farther from the world he once ruled. He could hear the press screaming beyond the police line. "Is he dying? Is this the end of Queen?" "Freddie, look at the camera." He turned his head weakly and saw a sea of flashes. Even now, they wanted to turn his suffering into a headline. Jim growled through clenched teeth, shielding Freddie with his body as they maneuvered him into the ambulance. Eliza climbed in too. The paramedics allowed her when they realized Freddie didn't want to let go of her hand. Inside, the sirens wailed and the city blurred past in streaks of neon and rain. Freddie forced a breath. "I never wanted them to see me like this." Eliza leaned close. "They don't matter now. I'm here. Jim is here. You are not alone." Freddie closed his eyes, tears slipping quietly down his temples. "Eliza," he whispered. "Tell me something. Was she scared? Your sister?" Eliza shook her head, voice cracking. "No, because she believed she was loved, even by someone she never met." Freddie's breath trembled. "I wish I could have met her." "She knew you would have adored her," Eliza said. Silence stretched, heavy but gentle. Then Freddie whispered, "I'm not ready to say goodbye." Eliza held his hand tighter. "Then don't." The ambulance turned, pulling up to the hospital emergency entrance. Doctors rushed forward instantly. "Critical condition," the medic yelled. "He needs a private room and immediate intervention." Freddie felt the oxygen mask slip as they transferred him. Jim fought to stay close, but security and staff swarmed the area. "We need to take him alone to stabilize him," a doctor insisted. Freddie panicked, eyes darting desperately. "Jim!" Jim grabbed his hand just before they separated him. "I'm not going anywhere. I'll be right here," Jim said. Freddie looked past him at Eliza. "Don't disappear, not yet." "I'll be waiting," she promised. Doors swung shut. Freddie was gone behind them. Eliza and Jim remained in the hallway, breathless, terrified. Jim wiped his face with trembling hands. "This is my greatest fear," he admitted. Eliza nodded. "Mine, too." Minutes passed, or maybe hours, time lost meaning. Finally, a doctor emerged. His face was serious, unreadable. "He's stable, for now," the doctor said, "but he's asking specifically for the young woman." Eliza's heart hammered. "For me?" "Yes," the doctor answered. "He says there is something he must tell you. Alone." Jim looked at her, almost afraid. "What does he want to say?" Eliza swallowed. She had a feeling she already knew. Something Freddie had held inside for years. something tied to Amelia and to the fear of dying before being understood. She took a deep breath as the doctor led her toward Freddie's room. Her hand trembled against the door handle, because when she stepped inside, she knew nothing would ever be the same again.